So, if you're sitting comfortably, I shall begin. Dear Ajahn, when I am in meditation, my breath comes and then it feels like it stops. I feel calm and peaceful. Why does it stop? And what should I do when I notice it stops? Call 000 and make sure that you've got your will or it stops, but it starts again when it wants to. You're not gonna die. 100% good record on my retreats. No one has ever died on my retreats, ever. So you're perfectly safe. So if it stops, just relax. Then it will start again. Always starts again, sooner or later. So, even if you die, then, unless you're an arahat, then you get reborn, it starts again. So, that's supposed to be a funny joke. It's just really disappointing when people don't get it. I do try. But anyway, it comes, then it feels like it stops. Let your breath do the breathing. In other words, don't try and control it, usually mess it up. Now, I don't know how old you are, but you don't need to admit it, but nevertheless, your breath has never let you down yet. In all the years that you've been alive, sometimes you've been busy, sometimes you've been sleeping, sometimes you've been meditating, sometimes you've been doing two at the same time, but still the breath has been coming in and going out without fail. It's a natural phenomenon, just let it happen. If the breath really does stop in the deep meditation, at that point you're just so blissed out, this is a deep meditation, you're perfectly okay, and then you wouldn't know it stopped. So if you think it stopped, it feels like it stopped, it means you're not in a deep meditation, it will just adjust itself afterwards. So, as they say here in Australia, no worries, mate. She'll be right. Dear Ajahn, thank you for the write-up on vegetarianism for monastics. Did I do that? Okay, anyway. When I lay people buy meat and flesh, they know very well these animals were slaughtered for them. Don't they get bad karma when animals are slaughtered? They experience fear, sadness, hate, anger. That's what the buyer consumes, fear, sadness, hate and anger. But the write-up, I don't know what write-up it was. On the notice board. Really? Oh my goodness, what have I written now? Fake news. I don't know. But this was, and again it's the fascinating part of this, was that Devadatta, this was well known, Devadatta did ask the Buddha, can we make vegetarianism a sort of a rule for the monastics? And the Buddha refused. Pointedly said no. And so often you wonder why. Why is that the case? And of course, in my life as a monk, as a layperson, I was a very strict vegetarian when I was young. And so much so that when I went, I was staying with my mum, and then she would fry something, and then I would wash the pan 3 times before I would use it to whatever vegetarian food I was eating. And I remember this one girlfriend, she invited me for dinner one evening, and then I remember that she cooked me, it was some very healthy brown rice, but I forget what type of meat it was, whether it was chicken or something in the curry, and I refused to eat it. And I look back on me afterwards, and I thought, just what an arrogant person I was. Because that girl went all out to try and make me a nice dinner. She tried her very, very best, and she just forgot. It slipped her mind that I was a vegetarian then, and I just really upset her. So that was the end of that relationship. Maybe it was for the good in the end, being a monk. But sometimes I thought, what did I do that for? Looking back upon that, what I would have done is, would have eaten it and then said, well, the next time, I'm a vegetarian, so please don't give that to me. instead of just really upsetting her. Because I found I was kind to animals, but I was cruel to human beings. So anyway, but later on, when I went to the temple to become a monk, they said that you can't eat vegetarian food because in that part of Thailand there was no vegetables at all. I mean, literally. And there was not a vegetarian culture. The indigenous culture was anything which crawled on the ground you ate. And sometimes the only no fruit, except in season. And sometimes the vegetables, if there was, it was just like fresh leaves from the mango tree. Really bitter, not very nice at all, but that's all the green stuff you had. So it was all very, very subsistence living, so it was very tough. Sometimes I would love to have some vegetarian food. But then later on, because that food, in the northeast Thailand was very, 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 very poor, sometimes dirty. You did get sort of lots of tummy problems, sometimes even dysentery. I remember having dysentery, that was very unpleasant. All the yucky stuff coming out, the pus and the blood. It's interesting that, because it was just going to the hospital, you don't know what you'd be given there, so I just used raw garlic. It was a very wonderful little antibiotic, raw garlic. I had to keep away from the monks for a few weeks because it really stank, but it certainly did the job. But anyway, and I never liked garlic, not raw stuff. So anyway, after a while then, that, my stomach got really, like many people's stomach gets ruined with that sort of food, mostly because it's really dirty. But you tried your very best. But then what happened was, a couple of times, one in particular, I was giving a talk this was over in Chempaka Buddhist Lodge, over in Kuala Lumpur. I think it's PJ, I think. But anyway, giving a talk there, and I don't know what they gave me to eat, because you're a monk, and so they give you some food. You don't sort of say, what's in that, what's in that. You try and make yourself easy to look after. But that during the talk, my stomach started to churn, and just when the question times came, I was trying to hold it back, but then the question time, and I said, look, I've got to go to the toilet. I never made it. Projectile vomiting on stage. Ugh, ugh. That was actually quite dramatic. But, it served the point that I wasn't making this up. I did really had to, watch my stomach. And it's just the food which, that my stomach seems to deal with and it seems to live on comfortably, is the food I grew up with as a kid, which was standard English food. Other people may not like it, but, for me it seems to digest without any problem at all. So I remember going to, where was it? I think it was to Canada, to Toronto once, and that I think Ajahn very kindly told, my hosts the sort of food which, my stomach could live healthily on, and that he was saying shepherd's pie. So the host, I was a bit sort of hungry because I wasn't getting stuff I could eat, and they made me this shepherd's pie. And I thought, wow, shepherd's pie. Wow, I can eat this. And then it had a lovely potato on the top, and when I dug underneath, it was, please excuse me, Sri Lankan curry underneath. Really hot and spicy. So I thought it was shepherd's pie, but you only see the potato on top, you know what's underneath. So anyway, that you try your very best. And I've seen many other people, similar, that it's wonderful to be vegetarian, and I wish I could do it, honestly. But you just can't at my age and what I've been through. But I always think that, because how you were brought up, the food you ate in your first formative years, I don't know why, but that seems to be the food your stomach and your metabolism gets used to. And to try and change later on in life, it doesn't work. So you try your very best, but that's one of the reasons why, that I think even the Buddha did not make it obligatory that you have to be vegetarian, so that many, many different people could actually join the Sangha, the monks and nuns, and so that people would not be rejected or reject themselves because they could not stand the diet. So that's my theory, and I'm being honest with you. It's wonderful that if you can. But I think in the future, because vegetarian diets and vegan diets are getting more popular in our world, so the kids are growing up with that. So, and hopefully they would have better cleanliness, because the food which I ate the cleanliness was the problem. Because one of the things I always used to eat was just one thing which was always in the diet was rotten fish, bladek. And the rotten fish, the reason why they ate it was only small fish which they would catch in the paddy fields. And they would catch them then, that was what they would have to keep for the whole year. So they would put them in earthen jars, and they wouldn't try and preserve them with salt or anything. They would just cover the earthen jars with a bit of plastic, put a rubber band around them, and just leave them. And so just like like cheese sometimes gets matured and goes like mouldy, and it's really tasty. Or you get people they call it game, and they shoot partridges and something, and they hang it up until it starts to go a bit smelly, and apparently that's when they like to eat it. And so this is the same with these little fish. When they started getting a bit mouldy and stinky, that's when they got the most delicious. So that's what we had to eat most of the time. And what happened was, I remember cleaning up around the kitchen in this monastery in Thailand where I was, and finding a jar of this rotten fish, and the plastic had been perforated, so the flies had been in there and laid their eggs. It was full of maggots. And I picked it up and I went to throw it away. And I was stopped by the head man of the village. Now the head man would be the most usually educated, the most competent, the one who was elected because of his skills, experience. And so he saw me, he said, "What are you doing with that?" I said, "Look, it's gone off, it's got all these maggots in it." He said, "No, give it to me, extra protein." And that's what we ate the next day. So no wonder, that very often, people had diarrhea and sort of sore tummies. And so, I had a lot of strength, but after a while, just, your stomach just does sort of give in and just get very weak. So, but I think, the food is much better all over the world now. So hopefully, that if you can grow up with vegetarian food or even vegan food, then that can be encouraged. But I think it's great that the Buddha never met that rule there, that you have to be vegetarian. Encouraged, but not obligatory. So that means that many, many people can help and become monks. And nuns as well. So I don't know actually what's said on the wall over there, but that's actually what happens. Dear Ajahn, when you first came to Thailand, you mentioned earlier, food was pretty below basic, like frogs and pickled fish. Didn't you ever feel like going back? How did you have such level of sadhana? Was it karma? Well, if you live with someone like an Ajahn Chah, that was just the benefit of that. The food was disgusting, and it was a lot of tummy aches with that. But just the simplicity, and it was an indigenous culture, because that culture had been there for centuries. And just the way they did things was very, very interesting, wonderful, and just learning a different way of doing things. An interesting little way of just, even like legal laws and responsibilities. I remember once it was just outside of the monastery. They'd only just built a big major highway, and very fast buses would go up and down there from Ubon to Bangkok. And I remember that one day there was a villager. He was on a bicycle coming back from this huge ceremony, and he was drunk out of his head, riding on the bicycle wrong side of the road with no headlights on. And of course the bus never saw him, they couldn't get out of the way, and so he just cleaned him up, literally, smashed him to bits. But it was the bus driver's fault, according to the culture of the place. And I thought, why is that? That fellow, he was wrong side of the road, really drunk, no one argued that, no lights on his little pedal bicycle. I said, why should he not be blamed? And they said, no, the bigger vehicle has responsibility to look out for the smaller ones. And so, he should have really been on the lookout. And I thought that, you don't sort of argue with that, you think, that's a different perspective, way of looking. And it's not an argument, it's just say, well, yeah, if you are stronger, bigger, faster, you have a responsibility to look after the small ones. It's not your fault if when you walk from here back to your room, you may step on a little millipede, or you may step on I saw one stepped on the little cricket, grasshopper. It's not your fault, but nevertheless, you should look out for the little animals who are more vulnerable than you. And I thought, that's a lovely little different way of looking at things. So that a lot of the stuff over there just really was intriguing. And also to see monks actually living a Buddhist life, just like when you read in the suttas, in the Vinaya, exactly the same. Going on alms round every morning, and just having no possessions, very few, no money. It was an interesting lifestyle. And then seeing snakes, and being kind to the snakes, and the snakes will never bite you. And the whole culture was very rich, with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, where all these different ideas have been tried out, and they managed to use those ideas in a beautiful way of practicing the Dhamma. So yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it, believe it or not, even with a bad tummy, and lots of mosquitoes and all this other stuff. And there's obviously lots and lots of wonderful things. They're not just living with Ajahn Chah, but seeing a few weird stuff, the old psychic phenomena and stuff. And all that was just fascinating. One of the other things we always used to see was many of those monasteries were in cremation grounds. So instead of having these crematoriums like we have these days, where everything gets hidden and sanitized, there you actually you made the little funeral pyre, and you put the body on top and you burnt it, and you see everything. You see the time pop when the skull bursts, and all the other little things you had to do. Sometimes that when you actually put the corpse in, especially they do have a little coffin, very very cheap, just plywood. You always have to make sure it's on the side, because what happens, and I did see this, that if it moves and it's on its back, then because it's just the natural phenomena, just because the heat on the muscles in the tendons in the back, it bends up. So you see the person sort of laying down, it starts very slow bending up. And you also see it sometimes because of other muscles, the hand. So you can imagine laying down and it comes up. And of course that's really freaky when it points at someone. Of course, the person hasn't done anything wrong, all it is just nature. So because of that, it's wonderful to see it on. And I also, touch it and just be with it. I remember we used to have people visiting, people doing like mostly the Peace Corps workers. And they'd come up and we'd ask them, just come up. We always do a little reflection and just contemplation. Just go up and every monk, every visitor, just have a look, touch. And that was amazing because many of these Westerners, I remember just a few of them said, no, don't, go up. Oh, no, I don't want to go. And that was wonderful. It was the first time they'd ever seen a dead body, a real dead body, without having been embalmed. And even to touch it and feel how cold it was. It was like taking away the fear and understanding that death is part of life, nothing to be afraid of. That was actually just an interesting, wonderful part. When you can't really do that over here in Australia anymore. Anyway, so that's some of the wonderful things we got from over there. Anyway, next one. When meditating today, I felt a strong joy inside. It was intense as an orgasm. Ooh, it made me cry for joy. What is it? Yeah, that's the nimittas. The joy's coming out. Yay! Wonderful. That's what I've been talking about. Haven't you been paying attention? So, a strong joy inside. It was intense, but, not going to say whether it's a jhana or not, but it's usually pretty close. Even those really, really bright nimittas, they're very, very powerful. And sometimes people keep saying to me, just, well, you get attached. You get attached to that joy. And that's when I quote the Pasadaka Sutta. And that's where the Buddha said, if anybody asks you, he's talking to one of the monks and said, Kumara Kassapa, he'd said, if the other people who don't know anything about Buddhism ask you, do you sort of indulge in pleasure? Do you have a good time? He said, oh yeah, but it depends on what type of pleasure you mean. If it's the pleasures of the five senses, no. But the pleasures of the meditations, oh yeah. And they said, well, what happens? Don't you get attached to those pleasures of the jhanas? And I said, yeah, we do. I said, well, what happens? Well, the indulging, it's called like anuyoga. Anuyoga means literally tied up with, like the two oxen yoked together. And said, what happens when you get tied up or attached to those pleasures of the meditations? And you should tell those people, said the Buddha, only 4 things can happen. This is what happens when you indulge in those beautiful pleasures. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. The 4 stages of enlightenment. That's what happens if you get into this bliss. That's pretty good, I think, pretty neat. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But sometimes people have this idea that, you have to suffer to get enlightened, to get anywhere on this path. You have to atone for your sins. And that's why, just Easter, and still see in the Philippines, people flagellating themselves to get rid of their sins. That is really sick. But, instead of flagellating yourself for your sins, blissing out for your sins. That's much more fun. And it's pure, it has no real bad side effects. So that means one of the reasons why this is it's actually quite a challenging path. Challenging your ideas. You mean you could bliss out and get enlightened that way? Of course. Just have a look at what it's all about lessening suffering. You lessen suffering a little bit, you're a little bit happy. A little bit more suffering you let go of, you're happier. Just when you let go of weights, of course you get lighter. Burdens of the past, worries of the future, of course you're lighter. You're not being held down anymore. You're easy to be happier. And you get happier and happier and happier. And happier and happier and happier. And happier and happier and happier. Oh. All the way to enlightenment, ultimate happiness. Interesting. But that's that's accurate to the path. I read this article with interviews with skippers and mountaineers. And they all they all related the same story when they had experienced extreme conditions as exhaustion, lost, near death. They encounter a person, suddenly a vision that gave them guidance. Is that something to do with devas or just a mirage? Ask them. There were skippers on sea or mountaineers or some. That many Vietnamese who came to Australia in the boats, lost at sea, raped, all their possessions stolen, and just drifting at sea for days, hopeless. And then some of them used to tell me that they saw these images of Kuan Yin floating over the ocean, and then they just opened their eyes or whatever, and then they saw coming behind it was a British Navy frigate from Hong Kong or something. They were saved. And you ask them, they said, no, they weren't hallucinating. So sometimes what actually is that? And sometimes that, because sometimes they're not, as you know that not all those Vietnamese refugees were Buddhists, some were Catholics. They never saw Kuan Yin. They say that saw the Virgin Mary coming over. What's going on? So that sometimes what they're actually seeing so close, this is my explanation, you may argue with it if you wish, but when you get to that close to dying, that you are malnourished, that your senses are starting to fade away. So, 5 senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, are not working as clearly as they used to be. Your mind can still manifest as this beautiful nimitta, the light. How you interpret that light, how you perceive it is the interesting thing. Because I remember reading a book about, I think it was that Many Lives, Many Masters or something. But anyway, they were talking about people with out-of-the-body experiences, and when they float up towards the light, they enter that light. What was fascinating was that how they experienced that light, when they came back, depended upon their religion and their belief system. So if they were a Protestant, they saw Jesus, and they swore that was who they saw. And sometimes you like to ask, no, was it blue eyes and no blonde hair, like in the movies? Or was it a real, like an Arab with curly hair? And of course we all know that Jesus would have been a Jew, Arabic, and just with short, dark-skinned, curly hair. Very different than what they portray in the movies for Westerners. And then, if they were a Catholic, Virgin Mary is very common. If they were Hindu, Lord Krishna. Mahayana Buddhist, Kuan Yin. Theravada Buddhist, even Buddha, and that's weird. But if they were atheist, Uncle George. And they swear that's what they see. Because what you see is what you expect to see, within a certain degree of limitation. Brilliant, bright, loving, peaceful. And this is how people interpret these things, what they expect to see. And that's what they do see. All you're really actually seeing is a reflection of your own pure mind. I always remember just when you start to talk about refugees and the Vietnamese, you know that there's this wonderful gentleman who came, just made it from the Vietnam in a tiny little boat. And he remembers, he made it to the coast of Western Australia, and the first people he saw were a couple of Australian fishermen. And what these Australian fishermen, they shouted out to him and said, "Welcome to Australia, mate. have a beer. And that was their welcome. I'm not sure how much he understood, but he certainly understood their friendliness and welcoming. And he's now the Lieutenant Governor of South Australia. Wonderful fellow. So, sometimes throwing refugees away, that's a bit sort of silly. Just this one was an amazing person and just came with nothing, and now so respected, was the Lieutenant Governor of South Australia. So anyway, so it's nice to welcome people. I always remember, just going to stories and anecdotes. This, one of the monks who was over in Thailand, I got to know quite well. And he disrobed eventually, but then when he came back to Australia, he got a job in customs, immigration, and he told me that he was at the airport in Brisbane when a whole plane load of Laotian refugees came in. Now, the Laotian refugees, the Laotians, they are just farmers. If they've done any geography, they don't know where Australia is, that's for certain. So imagine landing in this foreign land, not that knowing where the heck they are, and just everything is just totally just disorientating. And so this fellow, he was, some of you may know him, he does a lot of Buddhist scholarly work, it's Rod Bucknell. And he was at one of the counters, and so when this person was told to go get his documents checked, this Rod looked up and said, Madasai, Penjang Dai, he was speaking Lao. And they couldn't believe it. The first person they met in Australia could speak their language. And then what happened? The whole plane load queued at his counter. And no one would go to any other country. It doesn't matter how long it took. They wanted to go to this Australian guy who could speak and understand them. It was a very beautiful little moment. So it's lovely that. Anyway, what's the best way to teach meditation to children? Tell them to sit down and shut up. Nah, that doesn't work. No, that was when I was, somebody asked me that in the interviews, that when I first came to Australia, and, in the old Magnolia Street days, and, had to do a Dharma class for little kids, and those kids still keep turning up, they're very nice. And so I had to teach them meditation. So I had to innovate. I love innovating. Sometimes you're put on the spots, outside your comfort zone, see what happens. I'm sort of adventurous and courageous enough to do things like that. And so I decided I understood, because I had been a school teacher before, I knew a little bit about child psychology, that to know their ability to learn what they can understand, what they can't understand, know that they can visualize, they can imagine far, far better than what you can do when you're adults. So I got them to sit down comfortably, on the cushions, and then I told them to suggest to them, now when you're feeling really comfortable, make sure your bottom's fine and your legs are okay, and your shoulders are nice and loose, and there's no tension in your face. I'm going quite fast, obviously. And then I said to them, now imagine yourself floating out of your body. It's quite safe, you come back all right, float out of your body. Imagine yourself floating through the roof, 4 Magnolia Street, and just over the suburbs to the beach. Because, Australian kids, they grow up on the beach. Go over to the beach. And then, but don't stop on the beach. Go a little bit further. You can see the beach. Go further over the ocean. And then you can see your little private place, only for you, just this little island. And you just land just so softly on the warm sand. And you just lean back against the palm tree and put your feet out and feel the soft, warm cotton wool sand. And you just move your legs back and forth, and you feel the sand just going through your your toes in the spaces between. It's not sharp at all. It's just so soft and so pleasant. And you look out and there's the ocean, and it just stretches as far as you can see in all directions. And the sun is just warm, not hot, but beautiful. Blue skies, there's one or two tiny white clouds, but no birds, to disturb your peace. And you can feel this fragrant breeze just wafting over the ocean, keeping you cool, and it's just it's like perfume. I don't know what perfume it is, but it's just gorgeous to smell. And then you look at the waves, and the waves just roll in up the beach. And the waves just roll back again, not fast, not violently, but just so soft and peaceful. And you start to notice as the waves roll in, your breath comes into your body. And as the waves roll back again, the breath comes out. No force, relaxed, perfectly safe. I go, you're getting into it, you are, aren't you? And then eventually, time to come back. Imagine yourself rising up into the air, just floating effortlessly over the ocean. You can see the beach, Scarborough Beach or Cottesloe, whatever, and then you can see it and you just float right over it. You see all these people really noisy playing underneath. And you go over the suburbs to North Perth, and then you come in. You just float effortlessly through the roof and into your body. You're back again. Now you can open your eyes. And that's my meditation technique for the kids. Recently, when I was in Singapore, the reason I remember this, I was in Singapore, and there was lots of kids coming to the meditation. It was, just before, or last day before Chinese New Year. And then so I had all these kids there, school holidays, so they said, can you do some meditation for kids? And I did it. And all the parents, they were into it as well. They said, oh, this is really good. I can't do the breath meditation or Vipassana, but this I can do. So they were getting into it. But sometimes you can use visualization. I'll maybe teach a bit of visualization tomorrow, just about how you can help that in your meditation. It's really good fun. That's how I taught kids to meditate. And they still see them. In Anapanasati Sutta, experience the whole body and calming the whole body. Are they referring to the physical body or the breath? They're referring to the breath. I know I get into some arguments with some senior monks on this, but it's very clearly the breath. The word is kaya, sabba kaya. Kaya can sometimes mean the physical body, but it's also got namakaya, dhammakaya. You know what that means? Manokaya, the body of the mind. It means just an accumulation of stuff. Just like the word in English is used for a body of evidence. In law, it doesn't mean dead bodies which you cite to say you killed this person. No, it is a body of evidence. Anything which is a lot of, you call like a body. So that is how it's used in the Pali language. And so secondly, the Buddha actually says in the Anapanasati Sutta directly, the breath counts as one of the bodies. He says that, very clear. And the last thing is, imagine you calm the body down, you're watching the breath, and now you've got to watch the whole body. I mean the whole body, sabbakaya. So you've got to watch your saliva and just your pressure in your bladder in case you haven't been to the toilet yet, and the aches and pains. You've got to watch all of that. So it doesn't mean that at all. It means the breath. Because this is nature. A lot of times the stages of meditation aren't what you do. It's just what happens, like landmarks on the journey. So you're just being more and more still, see the breath come in, breath go out. After a while you see the whole of the breath. Just when you're walking, left, right, and after a while you can see every movement of the feet. It becomes fascinating. Just how many movements, how many sensations there are when you just lift one foot and move it forward and then it meets the ground again. Fascinating. Somebody asked about, can you get nimittas and jhanas? Walking, not those, but I remember when I was doing walking meditation when I first ordained, and it was a hall, maybe about this main ordination hall in Watsaket. And it took me half an hour to get from one end to the other and then turn around and went back again. It's zombie meditation, but it was natural, not forced. And I remember this occasion getting really into it. The feelings in the feet were incredible. They were delightful as you're moving, and just the body was doing the walking. It was amazing. And then, just like in meditation, you can hardly hear any sounds. So I heard a sound like it was 100 miles away. Brahmavamso, Brahmavamso. It was actually much softer than that, much more distant. I wondered what it was. And then I realized it was a monk shouting in my ear. I forgot there was an invitation to a house blessing I was supposed to go to. I was so into my meditation, I was late and he was sent to come and get me. I was only just a junior monk, may have even just been a novice said. And I thought, I knew that what was happening. But he was just standing next to me. I was looking at the floor, just blissing out, just on walking meditation. And I knew that I had to get out. It's so difficult, when you're so still. So I remember just moving my head. And every time you move your head, it's amazing just the sensations, how many muscles you have to do to move. I was just really into it. And then, I think he knew about meditation, so he didn't sort of, think I was crazy. But then when I finally, after a couple of minutes, looked at him, I said, what? It took such a long time. And that's what happens when you really get in to get focused. This beautiful little calm little world. Peaceful, delightful, just watching the sensations in your feet. So that's what happens. So anyway, the whole body, like the whole sensations of moving, that refers to the breath body. How do we build contentment upon contentment? Aren't you happy enough being here? When you want something more, you can't enjoy what you already have. So, contentment is learning how to be here. It's good enough for me. If Angulimala become enlightened, well, you got all the, you're much better than that. So, surely, if anyone got any tattoos? This guy had heaps of tattoos, and he got enlightened. Not enlightened, sorry, he got the jhanas anyway. So, if these people could do it, why can't you? So how does that happen? You just sit there and are content. Happy to be here. Wherever here happens to be. So happy to be here. Don't want anything. This is good enough for me. Letting go of wanting means contentment. And the mean contentment upon contentment upon contentment is like building it up. Building up contentment. The house of peace is made up of laying many peace bricks, one after the other. This bit of peace, this bit of peace, this bit of peace, and soon you've got the house of peace. So this is how it's built up. So with contentment, a little bit of contentment, happy to be here. Someone bangs the door, content with that. Just expect it will happen. You sneeze. That's part of having a nose. I've never seen anyone who has a nose who doesn't sneeze from time to time. So that's par for the course. So you're content. Contented and easily satisfied, not proud and demanding in nature. That's why we chant those things. It's supposed to brainwash you. Sometimes it does, sometimes. So contentment, it's a path. Happy to be here. And it's not a path which gathers moss and lichen because it's not moving. It's not stagnant. Stillness gets deep. The more still you are, the deeper you go. Which is weird, but that's how it works. So it goes deeper and deeper and things start to evolve. or involved, going deep inside this moment, deep inside the body. The body's a long way away. Deep inside the bliss, deeper and deeper and deeper. So anyway, that's how you build contentment. Really good fun. How much do you need to be content? Just a bit of kindness, that's all. Dua Anapanasati and Satara Satipatthana, which if I understand correctly is mindfulness, in all four postures generate merit for the practitioners? If yes, how so? Does Anapanasati only generate merits when one reaches the jhana stage? Of course you generate merits all the time. What is good karma? This is something which Ajahn Kantipalo said in one of his books a long time. I think it was a really cool thing he said. What is merit? What is doing good karma? He said, a step closer to Nibbana is good karma. A step in the opposite direction is bad karma. And it's very, very nice, a little easy way. So if it's going to be a step closer to letting go, kindness, peace, let's act of good karma. Well done. So you made some merits. And making merits, good karma, you've got to get some good merits before you can give them to others. It's like asking a homeless person to give a donation. They've got no money. So, get something to give first of all, and then you can actually give merits. So, get some peace, some wisdom, some kindness, some joy, and happiness, and then you give merits to all beings. Pretty simple. Anapanasati only generate merits when one reaches jhana. It always, everything. Even just being kind and opening the door to the nuns, making sure they've got enough to eat, being quiet. That's generating merits, caring for others. Very meritorious. Wow. I can't answer this question. This is the deepest question I've got ever. Can overeating, eating until you're full, or a bit more than full, make you restless? How to control my portion? Of course, if you're overeating, it makes you restless because you're going to go to the toilet. So, after a while, you eat, and you feel, after a while, you get to know how much you need to eat, how much you don't need to eat. And so that this is just like a bit of mindfulness and kindness to yourself. That's why we reflect as monks and nuns. We eat reflecting wisely, I shall eat, not for fun, not for fattening, not for pleasure, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for living the holy life. Thinking thus, I will overcome our hunger without creating feelings of overeating. Thus I shall live blamelessly and at ease. This is like fuel for the car. You find out the type of fuel you need. You can't put sort of unleaded petrol in the diesel car, and vice versa. So you find out the food you need, which you can run well on, and then off you go, but not too much. Dear Ajahn Brahm, is it because some people have many defilements, not enough payment, they don't become enlightened? Because they're impatient. Because I don't know why people want to rush to become enlightened so quickly. There's another 3 days of the retreat left yet. What are you going to do if you get enlightened this evening? You'd be bored, nothing to do. Crikey, I'm enlightened, got psychic powers, no one I'm going to do, just kill time, probably go around bothering other people. Obviously you don't do that. So, we don't get enlightened this lifetime, we've got millions of other lifetimes. So, just take it easy, don't rush. There's trouble with people these days, they want it now. Actually, how can I get out of saying that one and say now's the only time you have? Because they want it. Now, you can't want it now. Wanting is in the future. You want it in the next moment. So anyway, not enough power, they don't become enlightened because they're trying to become enlightened. They don't know where to look. If you could only remember that great story of old monks don't lie, then many more people become enlightened. How do I know a real nimitta apart from one created by my imagination, wanting one so badly? One way, if you imagine it and you make it happen, you get tense and tired. It doesn't give you this big boost. You don't go out afterwards just walking on air, just saying, oh, this meditation is so good, it's so wonderful. And if you really want to check it in with me, then I would just, come up and say, oh, I saw this wonderful. Come on, that wasn't a nimitta. Stupid. Again, trying to find out if you get upset. And if you say, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. If it was or it wasn't, I was just nice and peaceful and happy. And say, yeah, a nimitta, well done. Because it's how you know a nimitta is not how you look at it, but what it does to you. If it's really a nimitta, it means it comes from stillness, you're peaceful, energized, and your 5 hindrances in the nirvana get weakened immensely, if not overcome. So greed, desire, wanting, ill will, being upset, sloth and torpor, restlessness, just gone. Doubt, can't find it anywhere. That's how you know it, by what it does. That's why when people say, they say this quite often, yeah, I had a meditation, I'm not quite sure if I was asleep or I was in jhana. But anyway, at least you know you are sort of getting deep if you are energized afterwards and happy. If you're dull afterwards, it's just ordinary. That was just a bit of blocking out and dulling out, not real meditation at all. Because real meditation, it's huge mindfulness. And that's why often whenever I explain how the Buddha described the jhanas, the 4th jhanas, that is the purity, that is the acme. You can't get higher mindfulness than in the 4th jhana. That's real mindfulness like you've never seen before. So that's the greatest mindfulness. That's why a lot of times that's what people say, get that 4th jhana, get the mindfulness so strong, you come out of that afterwards and you've got power. You got power, baby, you got power. And you feel that, and so you can do all sorts of stuff. Dear Ajahn, with Buddhist tradition, when the loved ones passed away, what is your suggestion to do with the ashes? What about your parents' ashes? Thank you. Actually, because I was a Buddhist, when I taught at the school was in Devon. And it's really hard again trying to find other Buddhists around. So we had a tiny Buddhist club, only about 3 or 4 Buddhists in Exeter you could find. And one of them was the gardener in the local crematorium, in Exeter Crematorium. And so, just be nice to spend a bit of time with another Buddhist. So I went to see him. He said, you can come and stay, sleep on the floor. Not in the actual crematorium, but in his little house next door. And so, he was actually showing me when you put the ashes, in the rose bed. I don't know why people like roses. They put them in the rose bed, and they say, that's Auntie Ethel there. You can see that just how she always loved roses, and just her favourite colour, and just how healthy it is. That's her and those roses. And he was saying the truth of the matter was that if you put the ashes next to a plant like that, it will die within a few days, because the ashes are very, alkaline? So he said, we always put them in plastic bags. We never tell the relatives that Auntie Ethel is in a plastic bag, tied up, hermetically sealed, so it doesn't kill the roses. That was a bit of a shock to me, because then when I sort of thought where my dad and where my mum were, they were just in a plastic bag. That's not very inspiring. But, that's where it's only ashes, that's all. That's what I've given my sort of instructions to the monks. First of all, I wanted it to go in the yellow recycling bins, which are collected every Thursday. You see them out there. But, sometimes you can get caught like that, and so people see there's something going on there, and so you get in big trouble. So we've got a much better idea. The mulcher, because we get the mulcher coming up every now and again to make sort of mulch for the forest. So, just throw me in there with the twigs and the branches. They go back into the forest. And that's really good fertilizer that way. But a wonderful thing to do. So that's my last wish. No! Why not? You're not going to follow my wishes. Or the other... Okay, I'm going way over time here. Who cares? What you have in the tradition in Bhutan. Did you go with Iwan to Bhutan when you went over there? After, okay. Because when we went into Bhutan once, that was when I auctioned myself for the nuns monastery. Look, I give everything to the nuns. I said, you can have me for, 2 weeks? The highest bidder is for the nuns monastery. And whoever wins me, they have to make sure they return me in the same state as when they got me. So anyway, the person it was just an excuse to get some funds for the nuns monastery. And when they did that, I went over to Bhutan. And the person who was our guide over there, it's a really interesting little place, all the stories there. Apparently the Sangha-Raja of Bhutan, the head monk, had died about a year ago. And according to their tradition, they put it in a box, seal it, and the box or the person inside there, they would shrink, get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, until they would get so small they would disappear. And when they opened the box, they'd have the rainbow body, just the rainbow was all which was left of them. I said, have you ever seen it? He said, not close, because the old abbot was in the box and the junior abbot opened it up too soon. So it was very, very small. But then it stopped there because he disturbed the process. So that'd be a good way to go. Just you disappear, you shrink, till all that's left is the rainbow. Neat way to go. So I don't know anyway if they do that in any of the funeral directors in Perth. It's only a body, for goodness sake. It's, respect a body, but respect the environment as well. So, and then what about relics? If I died, do you want some relics? Have you ever seen the relics of the Buddha? What are the relics of the Buddha? Don't answer these questions. Because this is the Dhammadayata Sutta, the heirs to the Dhamma, where the Buddha says specifically, do not be an heir to my material remains. Be an heir to the Dhamma. So the real relics of the Buddha are the teachings, the Dhamma. Those are the real relics, not the bones. The real relics are the teachings. Anyway, to Ajahn, like metta meditation, is there a step-by-step instructions for death contemplation, or do you just think of death a few times, think what this will happen to me, etc.? Well, just thinking about it is one thing, but as Nike says, don't think about it, just do it. What you do, sometimes we do that on the walking meditation path to make it interesting. So if you're getting bored after a few days, nothing's really happening, get on the walking meditation path and you do a little mantra with your steps. Left step, you say to yourself, I will die. Right step, that's for sure. We got that from Thailand. Die, nair. Die, nair. I will die, that's for sure. But when we did that in Indonesia, it was the best. Because there it's mati pasti. Mati pasti, mati pasti. It's really cool. And what happens at first when you do that? I will die, that's for sure. I will die, that's for sure. What's that in Sinhala, Ananda? Okay, that's a bit long. Yeah.
But exactly the same.
Okay, yeah. So you start to do that. First of all, you're doing that. You think it's a joke. You know, you say, what am I doing this for? You know, Matty Pasty, I will die, that's for sure. And then, but after a while, you realize that of all the teachings, that is one which you can never argue against. That is so obvious, that's the truth. So you keep on going, and you realize that that is very, very deep truth. Then you get afraid. You have some fear, because people are attached to so many things. So you keep on walking, even though you feel afraid. And soon you get through that fear. And then you feel, I will die, that's for sure. Why am I worrying about all these things? My possessions, my family, my health, all these things, they don't really mean that much when they're looked upon relative to dying. Arguments, who's right, who's wrong. What do you want to do that for when you're all going to die? Who's the best? That doesn't make any sense anymore. So that's why it becomes a very wonderful way. You feel so free afterwards. You don't feel scared or morbid. You feel just like a bird, free of so many attachments, because die anyway. So that's actually a wonderful little contemplation. I will die, that's for sure. Ooh. For many years in my life, I had been taking the same train to work. And I always asked myself this question while looking at all the other busy commuters to work: what the hell am I doing with my life? You know that that's what they're thinking about you. I'm working for the sake of working, and having all the material things in my life doesn't make me happier. Sometimes I cry inside my heart and thinking, why not give up all these and live a secluded life? But I'm doing all these out of habit and society expectation. My question is, if I choose to look for the forest tradition path, can you recommend any good masters for women as teachers? Not masters. That is gender specific. A master is a male. So we call the female masters mistresses. Is that right? I like messing around with language. Because in Hong Kong once we had this dialogue between two masters. Myself, I forget, it was the other fellow, we were having a nice little debate about Buddhism. And so I said, well, next year, there's lots of really, really good female nuns, female nuns, nuns over in Hong Kong. Let's get some of them over. And then we could have debate between a master and his mistress. That would certainly get many people to come in the seats. So anyway, any good teachers for women as teachers? Yeah, over in Dharmasara, over in Santi. Because a lot of times, sometimes we think, you have to have sort of someone who's written books, or someone who's famous. I must be crazy being famous. Ajahn is much wiser. She's not famous. She doesn't get people asking her meditation questions in the toilets. It happened to me a couple of times in Hong Kong and Singapore. So, try Ajahn. But the problem is when there is a good teacher, male or female, the place gets clogged up, with people wanting to come and visit and stay. So that's a little bit of difficulty there. My question is, if I look for a forest tradition path, I like simplicity and also know living a forest life is much harder than living a monastic life is much harder than layman. Thank you for reading such a long letter, but I couldn't help asking it as I kept it in my heart for too long. Sometimes if you can't find like a place, I've found that sometimes you do literally have to think outside the box. And a lot of people these days, they find a simple, secluded place in the city. Because, living in the forest, you have so many regulations from councils and stuff which you have to keep, and just getting food in and other stuff in. And sometimes, especially in Asia, some of the forests are incredibly noisy. The cicadas and just other little animals who live in the forest. I remember years ago going into Perth, and it was actually to do something with the Thai Airways office, and then there was a whole floor which hadn't been filled yet, and so I went into that floor and it was just absolutely silent because of the the plate glass windows or whatever. You couldn't hear the traffic outside, and it was so peaceful in there. I thought, wow, this would make a great monastery. Because you know what the forest monastery is called? Aranya. It just means like wilderness, with no people around. And sometimes that places you can get even in the city. Quiet little place, still peaceful. You can meditate there, no mosquitoes, no snakes, and you can get sort of someone to drop you some food every now and again. Room service. Sitting there, any teachings, you just get so many talks of any monk or nun you really like on YouTube. Different way of having a monastery. Peaceful, calm, still. Interesting. Right, thinking outside the box. What's the better of keeping extra 3 precepts based on sutta, please? The extra 3 precepts, the more the merrier. Because how many precepts do the bhikkhunis have to keep? 311. How many precepts do the monks have to keep? So you're higher than us. It's true. 5 precepts, 8 precepts are higher, 10 precepts, the samaneris, 227 the monks, and then the highest of all, the bhikkhunis. Do you want to give the talk now? So the 3 extra precepts are just about renunciation, renouncing more. So the more renunciation, the more freedom. Okay. Bahia Sutta in Udana. Bahia travelled 1,200 kilometers in one night. There must have been, what was that, Elon Musk SpaceX? No. Bahia became an arahat just after listening to the Buddha's short talk, and Bahia was killed by a cow very soon. This story is too dramatic. Why? Can you share your wisdom about Bahia Sutta in brief? Thanks, 1 billion. Is that all? Only 1 billion? 1 billion what? Anyway. So, that's why sometimes whenever we do these big fundraisings, sometimes people ask, how much funds did you raise for the nuns' monastery? And I say, we raised 1.5 million. And they say, wow, 1.5 million, that's amazing. 1.5 million cents. I've done that so many times now. They oh yeah, we know what you're on about. But anyway, Bahia in his previous life. This is part of the Bahia suttas. It's not just in one place, many places. Bahia was one of a number of monks who decided, this in the time of Kassapa the Buddha, who decided to enlightenment or bust. So they went up a mountain. The only way up was this ladder, so they all climbed up the top, threw the ladder away. So they're up there in the mountain top, no way of getting any food, no way back, enlightenment or bust. And I think one of those, or I forget the numbers now, 1 or 2 of them got sort of enlightened, a couple of them became anagamis. Bahia just got nothing, he just died. And then, sort of, in his next life, Bahia was born on the west coast of India, and he had a few sort of escapades, sometimes really wealthy, sometimes poor, as a sailor. And then once he just got shipwrecked, he managed to get to the shore, save his life, but totally naked. And so just to keep his modesty, he got a piece of bark and put it over his private parts. And then somebody saw him and thought, wow, he's hardly dressed in anything, just a piece of bark. He must be a holy man. Those who have been in India know what I'm talking about. So, and thought he was a holy man and started giving him things and respecting him. And he thought to himself, basically, this is much better than getting a proper job. He gets respect, he gets honor, and he gets free food. So off he was there, just being honored and living just with a bark garment on. And of course, after a while, when people just respect you, you start to think that you're enlightened. And, he got the entitlement and then started to think it must be because he's enlightened. And when he thought he was enlightened, that's when one of his friends, who was up in the mountain with him, who died, that one was born in the pseudo-wasa, the pure abodes, came down to him and said, look, you're not enlightened, you're not even on the path to enlightenment, because I knew you from your past life. We were just monks who climbed this big mountain together. But, said his friend, who was an anagami non-returner, but he said, there is an enlightened Buddha living in the Ganges Valley. Go and see him. And that's actually when the Bahia travelled in one night. So obviously he did have some psychic powers from the previous life. And when he reached the Buddha, then he asked him the questions. Please, give me some teachings. And the Buddha sort of said, no, I'm on arms right now, not the right time. So he asked 3 times, and the Buddha stopped and said, okay, Bahia, listen very carefully. In the scene, there's just a scene. In the herd, just the herd, that's all, nothing else. In the cognized, the smelt, the tasted, the touched, there's just that, nothing more. And in the known is just the known. And when Bahia heard that, he was fully enlightened. How many of you just heard the same teaching? Have you got enlightened yet? And then he got killed by a cow. And those cows, the ox, they are dangerous. That's happened to me several times when I was in Thailand. You see these kwai, these water buffalo. It must be the brown robes of the forest monks. They don't do this sometimes they do to the city monks. Maybe their eyes aren't that good and they think this is tiger, this colour, and they charge you. So you have to be very quick, because they're dangerous. So anyway, that is my ideas about Bahia. Bahia did become enlightened, but not just by listening to that. It was all the background to the story. He had psychic powers. He'd renounced. So all he didn't have any Gucci bags, or not Gucci bags, Louis Vuitton bags, or Versace satin robes, or what else do they have? And anyway, just such a simple renunciant, and he got his previous life he'd been meditating. Anyway, following your instructions, I made peace the only God in my meditation, meaning if I get restless, bored, I'll make necessary adjustments so the meditation becomes peaceful and enjoyable again. However, I don't like that word, however, my mind goes away following streams of thoughts from time to time. Should I just carry on letting it be or use any other skillful means? If you are making peace with your wandering mind, then the mind will stop wandering. Anyway, if it does, what's the problem? You're peaceful. Peaceful coexistence. So what happens? The water buffalo story. So I just talked about water buffaloes. Over again in Thailand, this villager was leading his water buffalo out to graze in the fields, a hot season when there's no rice in the paddy fields, just the stalks of rice. And so he's leading him out, and the water buffalo are usually very docile creatures. And so, but then the water buffalo again took fright. The water buffalo lifts up their head. When they lift up their head, you realize they're going to charge. So you've got to be careful as a monk. He lifted up his head, and the owner of the water buffalo, he was just leading on a little string, sort of leash, and he tried to hold the water buffalo back from running off. Absolutely stupid, because who is stronger, a water buffalo or a human? And of course the water buffalo ran off. He couldn't stop it, but because the string wrapped around this man's finger, it took the top of his finger off. And because it was just right outside our monastery, he came into the monastery just holding up this finger. He wasn't really in pain, because I think shock was first of all, but it looked really gross, a bit of bone sticking up and just this bloody flesh, on his finger. So we took him to the hospital to get patched up, and then, he said afterwards, it didn't really matter very much. He still had most of his finger, and it's interesting, he said to scratch now with a bit of bone sticking up, or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, we used that. Always look on the positive side of life. Come on. You always get advantage of something. So, we always remember that. We use that as a Dharma simile. Your mind and your will, which is the strongest? Your mind wants to run off. If you try and stop it, you rip the flesh off you, whatever it is. So instead, your mind wants to run off or something, let it go, off you go, bye-bye. Because what happens with a water buffalo, it runs off, maybe about 100 meters, 200 meters, and then it slows down when it feels safe and tired, and then you just walk after it and grab the rope and lead it off. It's relaxed now. So always use that for the wandering mind. Don't just force it. Just let it go, and then it will come back up again. Now, okay, one of my story is after wandering around, the north of Thailand, northeast of Thailand, it was time to do the rains retreat, and I never found a nice farmer, wife, and 2 kids and a dog to spend the rains retreat with, because I wasn't an old monk yet. But what I did find, I found like the heaven realm for an English monk. It was in the north of Thailand, north of Chiang Mai, Mae Deng district, up in the mountains. It was a tea plantation. Ramming tea at the time. Now it became Lipton's later on. High up in the mountains, so it was cool. Really good temperature. Instead of the hot, humid jungles down below. And there was a cave there. This lovely cave. We used to spend so much time in that cave. And again, the monks know this story, that there's lots of bats in that cave. So it was no stank of bat shit, but I had such good meditation in there, such peace. To this day, one of my favorite smells is bat poo. When you smell bat poo, I like it because it's association with some happy times in my monastic life. And that, but it didn't start just all nice and peaceful like that. It started off, and I was the only monk there. It was an abandoned monastery. And the food, was actually, reasonably healthy and delicious. And there was a traffic problem. I have to say about the traffic problem in this monastery. Once a week, there'd be a truck. That's the only vehicle, like, pickup truck, a ute, which came up there to deliver any mail, take any mail back, and any sort of fruit or produce to send down. One vehicle a week. And you had to be up looking actually to see that vehicle. No noise of any aircraft. It was really just absolutely gorgeous. Where the village was, you had to go up a rise of a hill. The other side, the other valley, was the village. So this valley was totally solitude. And the villagers, they weren't interested in listening to any teachings or or much. All they want to do is feed you. And I thought, that's pretty good. Just feed me, don't ask too many questions. And I had a lovely time there. So anyway, but it was so peaceful there that my mind started getting restless. Started thinking a lot. And you know what I did? I tried to keep bringing it back. Thought, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. But what happened next? My mind started going crazy. Because I started thinking about what I call non-monkish thoughts. I started thinking about old girlfriends. I wonder if she's... I was at the time, I was only about 28, 29. And, I wonder, maybe she's still available. Stop it, Ajahn Brahm. You want to be a monk. But she's really... stop it! Well, I started thinking of old girlfriends and romance. And then I said, no, stop it. Go back to your breathing. You know what happened? It got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it got really frustrating. I was trying my hardest. I wanted to be a monk. But these thoughts kept on coming into your mind. Romance, sex, fantasies, all sorts of ridiculous stuff. And the thing is, I never had anyone to talk to. It was an abandoned monastery, just myself. And so one day I went into the main hall. I was just really at my wit's end. Bowed down to the Buddha statue and just asked for help. But literally that was what it was, no one else to help. And just the idea came up, let's do a deal, a compromise. And the compromise was, mind, you behave most of the day, watch your breath, but from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. every afternoon, you can do whatever you want. That's my sexy hour as a monk, okay? You can do whatever you want. Any thought, I will not stop you. If you want to mess around, you can mess around from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Every other time, you behave. Now, I thought that was reasonable. But what happened? The reason I tell this story was it was as difficult as ever. My mind just would not behave. Try to watch the breath, come on, watch the breath go in, go out, and this thought would just bash down the doors. I think you all know what I'm talking about, just trying to control this mind. So, but at least I kept my promises. So when it came to 3 p.m, I went up to my hut, leant against the wall because I was just exhausted. And I put my feet out, just so tired, fighting my mind all day. But okay, 3 o'clock now, until 4 you can think any thought you like. Anything goes, the weirdest, sexiest, whatever is allowed from 3 to 4. And for the next 1 hour, my mind watched every breath without missing one. So easy. And that really just blew my mind and said, what the heck is going on? When I've been trying to control my mind, it goes crazy. And now I let it go, do whatever it wants, and it's peaceful. Because I let it go. I let it be. And I realized I've been fighting that mind. And I've been feeding it. Just like the anger-eating monster. If I just let it be, really let it be, slow down and stop. With every breath, effortlessly, without missing one. Now I think you understand a little bit of why your mind is restless. Why is it running away? Who is it running away from? I think you know that. There's more to it, but that's a lot of the reason why we're restless. The last one. Ajahn Chah always emphasized on discipline and striving. How do you know? How many of you actually live with that monk? There's so many myths go around about these monks. He didn't emphasize discipline and striving as a way to enlightenment. There was one of those monks, I think I mentioned him, he was, this is one of the Western monks. Many of you, some of you may know him, I better not say who he is. He was really striving hard. And he was sitting up all night, not resting, just hardly eating, just, he was just really pushing it Fortunately, Ajahn Chah came to visit that monastery. That was Pudindeng Monastery. Came to visit that monastery, and this monk was so tight because of his effort, he had an epileptic fit in front of Ajahn Chah and fell off. They have these really raised platforms. He fell off and cracked his head open. Had to take him to the hospital to get stitched up. And again, it's the only time he's ever had an epileptic fit in his life. And so because he was striving so hard. And Ajahn Chah, as soon as he saw that, he realized the Westerners, especially, by the time you get to go to northeast Thailand to eat frogs and ridiculous food, that you've got incredible willpower. And he realized you don't need to encourage willpower in these highly motivated people from the West. They need to be calm down, just take it easy more. As for the locals, the Laotians, I lived in that place for such a long time. They are the most laid back people I've ever seen. I mean, they really are laid back. And to understand some of the stories about the Laotian people, this was especially before the Vietnam War. Actually, during the Vietnam War, there's one of the monks over there. He was living in Luang Prabang during the Vietnam War when the Pathet Lao, that's the communists, were fighting the royalist forces in Laos. And so he was on one of these little restaurants. Bamboo and thatch would never ever pass health and safety if there was any council around. Dirty, but just the food was delicious. He was having his lunch there, and on the next table were the government troops. They were also having their lunch. The M16 machine guns were against the thatch wall, enjoying their lunch. And into the restaurant came the communist troops. Same restaurant. And imagine if that was you. The Westerner, he just wanted to dive under the table. It's going to be a fight, to death. This is not just messing around, this is war. But the communist troops, they just chose another table, put their guns against the wall, and ordered their lunch. Because Laos was incredibly civilized at that time. War would always stop for lunch. Crazy as it seems, that was typical. That is why Ajahn Chah used to have to really force those Laotian monks to actually get going. Of course, some people didn't need to be forced, but it was not striving and discipline. There's a lot of kindness there as well, and a lot of encouragement, so that you could have lots of nice, good meditation. So, not discipline, striving. And interesting, I'm going to stop soon, that that I had a falling out with Wat Pa Pong because of the ordination of nuns. But recently that we had the biography of Ajahn Chah, was translated into English by Ajahn Chah Saro. So I happened to be in Bangkok, and so I had actually a free afternoon because we changed an appointment, and so got someone to ring about, hey, can I come and say hello? So he was always a very good friend. He didn't really sort of buy into any of this stuff. So went to go and see him, and so, but he said, I'm glad you come because he's just finishing off the biography of Ajahn Chah. Because I was with him for such a long time, I think there was only only Ajahn Pasano was with him as long or longer than I was with him. Because even Ajahn Sumedho, he was only there about 4 or 5 years before he went to, about 5 or 6 years before he went over to the West. I was staying with him for about 9 years, 8 or 9 years. And by that time I could understand Thai and Laos. I was really fluent in those days. I understood what he was on about. But anyway, so some of the stories he wanted some feedback on. Did he get it right? Because Ajahn Chah Saro came about 5 years after, 5 or 6 years after I ordained. So, but I took the opportunity, because people always ask this question, what did Ajahn Chah teach? Did he teach jhanas? And so, I wanted to find out from Ajahn Jayasara, who'd gone through so many recordings of Ajahn Chah. I knew what I heard, but sometimes your memory can just fool you, so I wanted to find out. And he said, oh, of course he taught jhanas. But he used the Abhidharma commentary term, apana samadhi. That is the same word for jhanas. Sometimes they call that the absorption or attainment, whatever, apana samadhi. Then I said, what about the insight? Where did he say you get the great insights? And he said, oh, it's just from the upachara. And without any prompting, Ajahn Jayasara said, yeah, there's two types of upachara, just before you go into jhana and when you come out from jhana. So which one did Ajahn Chah say from the tapes? He said, oh, the one afterwards. I put my hand up, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If you read Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond, you've heard all the teachings of jhanas which I've been teaching. That's actually, I don't know if I remember this from Ajahn Chah, but that's certainly how I teach as well. Jhanas are important. Where you get the big insights is just after you come out of jhana. So that's actually how Ajahn Chah taught. And anyway, the last question. Please let us say 3 sadhus to the great, the name is coming up soon, for her ever-willing service. She gave up her kuti to help another. And who do you think that is? Who? Bianca, okay. I know it's embarrassing, Bianca, but it's good. It's to receive just praise. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Okay, so it's 9:30 and you're still all here. So I hope you enjoyed tonight, and it's special because tomorrow night I will leave you in the capable hands of the nuns. You can find out who they are and ask them. Please be kind, just ask them nice questions. Don't be sort of too hard on them. And what they usually do is you ask a question. You can either put it in the box here. And this is to say, Venerable, go to me, or whichever one you want to ask the questions. Or because she's a senior nun, Venerable, go to me. If you don't like the question, you can pass it down the line. Put someone else. Passing the buck, that's one of the privileges of being senior. And then it's all the time that you can ask deep questions if you wish, because sometimes you always think, oh no, only sort of the big teacher knows these deep questions, but they give some amazing answers. We need to do this every year because it's wonderful for you see the nuns over here and you want to find out about them and to start respecting them. They're not just ornaments. They don't just sit here to look good. They are very wise, compassionate, good people. So anyway, that's for tomorrow night. Not to be missed. Okay, so have a nice evening.